Welcome back, everybody, to Hoops HD. It is Monday,
Chad, can you let
December
me know when
5th.
we get started?
Sure, no problem. Uh,
Okay, good.
about an hour, so you can just go off the screen for a little while.
Oh, all right, all right.
It is Monday, December 5th. This is the Hoops HD Report. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined up top here by a square which David Griggs used to be
What?
over there, and David Dorman over here,
We're starting in
John
an hour,
Teitel
right?
below me, John Salika,
1
and
hour.
Rocco Miller from bracketeer.org
An
as
hour, right, Chad?
well. Our colleague Joey Fortson might be joining a little ways in, might not. Hopefully we'll get him in. But we've got a lot to get to this week. It was a very busy week with two challenge series, the ACC Big Ten, the Big 12 Big East, a conference play starting in several major conferences, including the Pac-12. And on top of all that, just today, this morning, the first net ratings came out from the NCAA. That means we'll be, as we go through the conferences, and we pull our screen share up here in a few moments, we're going to have all the ratings will be up there. The net ratings are out. The strength of schedule ratings are now out based on net, all that stuff. So, maybe no surprise, Houston #1. Bit of a surprise that another Houston, Sam Houston #7, but these ratings, Griggs, these ratings are kind of meaningless this time of the year, though, I would think.
They are. It depends on how you look at it. I know a lot of people are like, well, why do they do it so early? I guess my response to that is, well, why do they, like, Gonzaga just tipped off, like it's 0-0 8 seconds in. Why do they have the scoring clock on so early? It's not like if Kent State scores first that means they're going to win the game. I kind of like them when they come out early. I wish they'd come out the first day. Honestly.
Rocco, did anything surprise you when the ratings came out, or was it just kind of, same thing as every year?
Yeah, I wasn't too surprised. I think if you took, like a lot of us pay attention to Ken Palm and Torvik and some of those metrics that are updated daily. Haslam's another good one. If you took away like any of their preseason ratings and just went off purely the games, that's kind of how I guessed at it. I came pretty close on a bunch of those mid-major teams, but I do think it's important for the under the radar teams because they only get 2 months worth of games that will really jump them up to that level. And then it's up to them if they're going to stay there or have any more opportunities to move up there. But for the power conference teams that we'll talk about tonight, I don't think it means a lot because we're basically less than 25% into their stories and they're going to have tons of opportunities.
I'll tell you what, I want to start the show off tonight before we get to this screen share on those the conferences or the games that happened. I figure with the net ratings out, it's time maybe to go to one of our favorite features, which is the old blind resume.
Blind resume. We normally do this on the bracket show, but all right.
We'll do a little blind resume here. And I got a couple of resumes here.
And that is a ridiculous.
The big question here is which one is worse? Dorman.
Oh, I know.
Pretty bad.
I don't know which is which, but I know the two teams.
I think it'll be pretty obvious, though. But
I'll say Louisville's is worse.
Yeah.
Okay, we have net 361 and net 341 up here, and believe it or not, this is not only not the under the radar show. In fact, neither one of these is even an under the radar conference. Would you believe that? Yeah, let's get this up right here if I can. I think
only one of them has a national title in the last 10 years. There you go.
Yeah. There we go. And the I seem to have lost the screen share.
Like the screen share has rejected Chad's
the screen share has
resume.
Okay, let me try this again. I hit the wrong button.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was just.
And okay, is the screen share back? First of all,
yeah, it is. All right, this is. Why does anybody watch this show?
All right. And do you believe we actually do have two power conference teams up here, both winless, both sub 340 nets, the Louisville Cardinals and the Cal Bears?
Oh, it's Louisville and Cal. Okay, I thought it was Louisville and Florida State.
No, Florida State has wins. These are two winless teams.
Well, Florida State is at least in the top 300.
Teitel, have you ever seen anything like this? These two resumes, a month into the season, Power 5 conference teams.
It's hard to imagine. I mean, it's one thing when you're losing to Arizona on the right and Maryland on the left, but like they each have 3 tier 4 losses. And while Louisville's are all by a point, I assure you Cal's are close, but like Southern by 8 and like at home to Texas State. I mean, I understand the strength of schedule is 176, but like Cal is worse somehow.
And is that something, Greg, you've overlooked here? We've been insulting Louisville so much. Maybe Cal really is worse.
Well, Cal might be worse. I think Louisville is more like intriguing in the sense that they're a little bit more storied in basketball. And it's just, if you go back the last 2 years, I don't know who's making decisions at that school. But I sure as hell don't know why they still are. They haven't done one smart thing in years, and it shows when you go back to last season, when they got rid of Chris Mack. First of all, good move. You know, that really got things turned around. And secondly, they're in this, like, if you go back to last season and look at the rest of this season, which is right there on the right, they're in a 50-game stretch where they could lose more than 45 of them. This is real. This is a program that has hit the mountain, and will it ever bounce back?
I'll tell you the one thing I look at, though, Stalika here, I at least see a very potential win for Louisville in that Florida A&M game on December 17th.
Yeah.
I don't know that I see any wins for Cal.
Well, if I'm looking at Cal right here, I'm thinking at least 1 or 2 Pac-12 teams are probably going to fall asleep going to Berkeley. I'm sorry, Rocco, but Washington is one of those teams. I could easily see Oregon State being another team that.
The Beavers showed a little life this week. That's why I don't even see that. I don't even see that as a loss. But let's go over to the conference here. I think we'll start off with the ACC tonight.
No, let's do an entire show on Louisville and Cal.
Well, let's start with Louisville's conference. How's that with the ACC? Which Dorman actually won the ACC Big Ten Challenge 8-6, which I think was a complete shock going this. We thought it would be like 12-2 Big Ten.
I think the Big Ten is much better. I think it's all based on the matchups. That's how the ACC got all the wins. But if you go top to bottom, I'm taking the Big Ten all day. Although I do think Virginia is real. Virginia, I said it before in this show, everything they've done this year has impressed me. If they went out to Vegas and lost those games by 30, I would have been impressed with what they went through. They end up winning those 2 games. Extremely impressive. I think Duke's young kids will get going. 2 freshmen in the top 10 class are just getting healthy and just getting going. Virginia Tech, people were saying, oh, North Carolina's fine. Wait till they get in the conference. Virginia Tech smacked them last night. That was no fluke. Virginia Tech looks very good early in the season.
Yeah, and well, let's stick with Virginia Tech. Ty, I think you had some thoughts on them as well.
8-point win over the Tar Heels on Sunday. They're 8-1. Their only loss is at Charleston, which is bad, but it was by 2 points, and they blew an 8-point lead with 8 minutes left, and it was on the road. So excusable, if not great. Very tough schedule ahead. Host Dayton Wednesday, play Oklahoma State in Brooklyn next Sunday. The good thing, they have a great offensive balance. It's not just one guy you can key on as a defense. All 5 starters scoring between 9 and 17 points a game. The one I was unsure about, Grant Basile, coming over from Wright State to the ACC. He's looked fantastic. 14 points, 2 blocks a game. He's shooting 43% from behind the arc. This team seems legit.
The only exception I'll take we just mentioned is College of Charleston. Very good, actually, under the radar school. That
I think so.
That if they win out this week, we might be talking about it on this show here because they may be cracking the top 25.
Yeah,
they just missed it.
Yeah, they're up to 27th, aren't they? Yep. They're really getting close. So yeah, be ready to be talking about them.
Rocco, how about this North Carolina team though? In the national championship, preseason #1 by a lot of people, and just this far into the season, and they are out of the top 25 completely.
Look at the AP rank. I just want to draw attention to that. I know you're going to Rocco, but 42nd.
Is your name Rocco?
No, but I am drawing attention to the AP ranking right there. What the hell?
Yeah, I'm not that concerned overall. I mean, obviously they would like to be playing better. They lost a game in quadruple overtime to Alabama, a top team. They got beat by a good Iowa State team on a neutral. They lost true road games to Indiana and Virginia Tech. Those are their 4 losses. I can live with all 4 of those losses. I get that it's a long season. I know that this team has had all sorts of hype with the #1 preseason ranking and Armando Bacot doing all sorts of NIL distraction type of activities. I think by the time we get to like January, February, this team will turn it on. Let's not forget last year. Last year, by the time we got to March, they didn't even have a win against the field. Then they ended up going to the national title game. So if anybody's going to panic about North Carolina, it certainly won't be me. I feel like all 4 of those losses are perfectly justified.
maybe the team though that's kind of surprised me the most here, Sleeko, is how about those Pitt Panthers?
Yeah, Pitt Panthers, they've had 2 wins on the road. One that's not on the screen right here is where they actually got a blowout win at Northwestern, which looks even more significant when we talk about Northwestern later. But to show that was not a fluke, they also get an 8-point win at an NC State team that only had 1 loss on the year. So the Panthers, are they slowly turning a corner, or was this more of a 1-week mirage right here? They've certainly accomplished more than Carolina has done at this stage.
Did you think we'd actually say that Pitt has a better resume than North Carolina at some point in this season, more further than 1 game in? But Griggs, here is the upcoming schedule, and there is.
Oh my God! Look at Wednesday, the Stallings Classic.
Oh my God!
Pitt at Vanderbilt, the Kevin Stallings game. Yes.
Oh wow! I had a thought, but I don't. The Stallings Classic is I can't see anything else. Are there any other games this week?
Louisville, Florida State.
Yeah, there you go.
Another Stallings game.
Tuesday night, tomorrow,
Yeah.
James Madison at Virginia. Virginia better be ready. James
Oh, yeah.
Madison, good club.
Yeah, that's a good one. One that kind of jumps off, and we didn't talk about this before the schedule. Notre Dame had an interesting week where they blew Michigan State to Kingdom Come and then lost at home. So a little bit schizophrenic there by the Irish, hosting a Marquette team in old Big East and I guess old Mid-Con rival before that. They don't regularly play, but it's a lot of fun when they do. And Marquette also been a little bit schizophrenic this year. How important is that game for Notre Dame to get that one at home?
Oh, I think it's very important for Notre Dame because I have not been impressed with what I've seen on the court from Notre Dame so far this season. They're 6-2 is not bad at this stage. The 6 wins even were just close wins in home bye games.
5 of them were close in home bye games, and another one they blasted Michigan State. I mean, I went from saying they're the worst 5-1 team I've ever seen to saying, man, this is a pretty good 6-1 team. And then they lost the next one.
Fair enough. I think another game obviously worth mentioning, Titel, Duke and Iowa tomorrow night. I mean, part of the Jimmy V Classic.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Duke's made of. I mean, I thought Kyle Filipowski was going to be like the 3rd best freshman big man on that team, and he's playing like an All-American. So if Lively and the others can come along, like they will be fine by March.
I have several other interesting games here as well. Georgetown, Syracuse, an old Big East game there. Georgia Tech, that's a big rivalry. And in fact, I think there's a trophy for that game, Griggs. Am I right?
Is there?
Is it
the
Hornets nest?
It is the elephant turd trophy.
Save that for the Atlantic 10.
There's the Hornets nest. It was given to the winner of the Charlotte Davidson game every year. It is our new favorite trophy here at HoopsHD. So I still can't get over that trophy. Let's go on to the other half of that ACC Big Ten challenge. Let's go over to the Big Ten and Titel. Why don't we start off with this Northwestern team that we already mentioned very briefly here. 6-2 overall, 76 in the net. Not, kind of a surprise.
Yes, and schizophrenic. They lost 2 straight to finish November. I thought we were done with them, and then they go to Michigan State and win by 7 on Sunday. They have a home cupcake next weekend, and they host DePaul on the 17th. Their strength, interior defense, 39% allowed from 2-point ranges, number 1 in the country. And a lot of teams have only 1 point guard they can depend on. This team's got 2. Our Halloween favorite, Boo Buie, as well as Chase Audigay. They're both scoring and passing. And I think Chase is actually going to challenge some guy named Cam Spencer at Rutgers for the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year.
And you're going Cam Spencer. You're not even going McConnell, who's missed a few games and was defensive player year next. All right. I'm not going to complain about that, but that Rutgers team, with the tough loss to Miami, bounced back. Huge win though, Dorman, over Indiana on Saturday, albeit at home. But you just can't win at the rack.
No, you cannot win on the rack. At the rack, if you're a visitor. Indiana might have been being told how great they were after the Carolina, and they looked great. But Rutgers had it. Rutgers played great defense on Saturday, slowed the game down to when they got the tempo they needed, And it wasn't close in the end. Rutgers really handled that game. I was really impressed with the way Rutgers played.
I was too. You don't just go in the Jersey Mike's Arena and expect to get a win at Jersey Mike's Arena. You know, Rutgers very hard to beat at Jersey Mike's Arena.
Rocco, I know all they did was win at Florida State, which is honestly not that impressive, and beat Minnesota at home, which is not that impressive either. But Purdue, now it's number 3 in the debut of the net, undefeated. If you look at those resume-based metrics, including Joby's J&G, number 1 across the board in all of those. How good is this Purdue team?
Well, I mean, obviously with Zach Edey, like we've talked about, there's a matchup nightmare for nearly all 360 plus D1 schools. And, you know, they've gotten some really good contributions from Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith, who's just been an emerging freshman, you know, really under recruited, and Purdue had a spot for him. So, of course, you know, Painter's just done a great job of figuring out how to use these tools. You know, Edey finally getting a healthy dosage of minutes, not being stuck sharing time with Williams. Yeah, they're a potential like matchup nightmare for pretty much anybody, and a reason why I picked Purdue to win the Big Ten this year before the season. And it's just crazy to see it all coming together this fast, honestly.
Yeah, Purdue, a team that might be good enough to beat Rutgers at Jersey Mike's Arena.
We shall see.
Yeah,
Griggs, I know your favorite coach is no longer there, but probably the upset of the week involving a Big Ten team winning was Nebraska yesterday, going and winning by 10 at a Creighton team that looked really good until that game.
yeah, it was almost inexplicable. Nebraska hadn't I mean, I don't want to say that they had looked as bad as Louisville, but they had shown no indication at all of being able to go to Creighton, kind of a snake pit, very, very hard to win there, and getting the win. I almost don't know what to make of it. And when you look at Nebraska, like pull them up, you almost have to start wondering, are they putting together, is this the early signs of a tournament team, or was this just a massive anomaly here?
Oh,
Yeah, and you see that sometimes in rivalries, right? Where a team just comes out of nowhere and knocks off the hated rival, and that could be the case. But I thought what Nebraska did the last 3 games, even though BC and Florida State aren't very good, they blew the doors off of those 2 Power 5 schools as well. So maybe they do have something brewing here.
well, other than their game against Minnesota and a home game against Queens, it is brutal the rest of the schedule for Nebraska. So,
Right. And it's gonna be one of those. Yeah, Chad. I think where you're going probably is what we see in the Big 12 a lot, and even here in the Big 10 is you gotta stay somewhere around 500 in the league to stay under consideration. So they're gonna need to go like 9-11 or 10-10 in the 20 game Big 10. Not gonna be easy.
yeah,
And there's almost no nights off.
Exactly. Yep.
Do want to throw a quick shout out here? Maybe Stalika over to this Wisconsin team. I pulled them up on the right. Real nice win at Marquette. Although they did lose the game against Wake Forest as part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge.
Wake Forest was definitely a bit of a bloody nose for the Badgers, and we didn't even mention the Deacons when we were talking about the ACC, because that was a win they desperately needed for their own schedule. But unlike Wake, at least Wisconsin has more chances to get some decent wins on their profile. And remember, Marquette was coming off of an ass kicking at home against Baylor, and this game ended up going to overtime, and Wisconsin ended up outlasting their in-state rival here. So I would say sort of a decent week for the Badgers here.
Yeah, we'll talk about that what Marquette, what happened between Marquette and Baylor here in just a minute. First, I want to take a look at the upcoming schedule, as we do have conference play continuing. Other than tomorrow night, we already mentioned the Duke Iowa game. The other half of the Jimmy V is the Illinois Texas game. Rocco, I think that's a pretty interesting doubleheader, actually.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how Texas does away from home. I mean, obviously they've looked phenomenal in their shiny new building against Gonzaga and Creighton, but now they go away and it'll be a much different environment. Illinois has already played in some big games in Vegas. They also just played a big game with Maryland. I don't know. I think Illinois, there might be something Texas isn't ready for, and Illinois can perhaps knock them off due to that.
And we also have several very fascinating non-conference games coming up next weekend, including Indiana, Arizona, Maryland, Tennessee as well. I throw in there.
Yeah, in Vegas, the Wildcats are familiar with that city from the Pac-12 tournament every March. So hopefully they'll have some good fan and alumni support. I'm a little nervous that they got exposed against Utah, but hopefully they can bounce back.
Yeah, Maryland, Tennessee game, I believe, is in Atlanta on Sunday. That's a quadruple header there. But sorry, Griggs, you got a quick point.
Big one on Thursday night. This Iowa Iowa game. Both teams.
Did they get that?
Yeah, they get that. That's the Cyhawk Trophy right there. It's the Cyhawk Trophy covered in elephant dung. But like they this is like, I think both teams are a little bit better than expected. At least Iowa State's a lot better than I thought they'd be. But this is I think most people know this is a rivalry. I don't think they understand just how heated this rivalry is. Iowa State was ranked second in the nation one year and stormed the court after beating unranked Iowa. You just don't see that very often. It's going to be wild. It's just going to be a fun addition to the game. And this is just one of those that it might not get the national recognition that Duke and North Carolina and some of the other ones get. I don't think it's BYU Utah hot, but oh my God, this one is hot.
Yeah, it is a very good rivalry. That should be a fun game on Thursday.
Yeah.
Let's jump over to Stalika, to your conference here, the Big East. And your Xavier Musketeers, part of the Big East, coming off of getting shellacked by the Big Ten in the Gavitt games, got a tie here, 5-5 with the Big 12 in their challenge series.
Every single home team in this series won right here. And if we're talking about the Musketeers, it was kind of a flukish first half where West Virginia was hitting an ungodly percentage of shots, including a couple bank threes. But needless to say, the Mountaineers were not able to maintain that pace in the second half. And Sule Boom, despite getting 3 fouls in the first half, managed to not get any fouls himself, but managed to draw multiple fouls from West Virginia. And he managed to hit, I think, 11 out of 14 free throws. So it was a win the Musketeers desperately needed. They're going to have one that we'll get into a little bit shortly that they'll need just as much, if not more.
Yeah. Rocco, UConn sitting here 9-0, number 2 in the net, and coming off of their winning their Phil Knight tournament, get a win over Oklahoma State this week.
Yeah, I mean, UConn just staying really solid. Sonogo is another beast, kind of like Zach Edey in the Big Ten. He's a difference maker. He's making great decisions with the ball, like not just in the post, but when he gets the ball in the perimeter, he's finding guys. He's such a better passer than last year, and great supporting cast. And I mean, to do all this without Jordan Hawkins being that big of a contributor really shocks me, because I thought Hawkins was going to be the guy to be the alpha, but it's been, a cluster of incoming players, including Joey Calcaterra from out here in San Diego. He played for the Toreros the last few years. So really, really impressed by the job that Hurley's done to not only put together this roster, but also have this team ready to dominate. And of course they did that in Portland and kept it going last week.
Another team that is sitting here right behind them in the standings, at least Titella, 8-1, although they are coming off that first loss of the season, is the Johnnies.
Yeah, I mean, they did start 8-0, but then I think were a little Hilton magicked out with a double-digit loss at Iowa State on Sunday. It wasn't even that close. They were down 17 in the second half. They host DePaul to begin conference play on Wednesday. They do have great balanced scoring, all 5 starters averaging 10 to 15 a game. And Rocco mentioned Sonogo. I think Joel Soriano, the senior big man for the Johnnies, could give him a run for Big East Player of the Year. 14 points, 12 boards a game. I can't wait to see them battle it out in the months ahead. They also need junior forward David Jones, frankly, to just stop shooting threes. He's 4 of 26 behind the arc in his past 4 games. Pass the ball to your big man.
Dorman, I'd say at the bottom of the screen there still is Villanova, although they finally got a win beating Oklahoma. Is it too late for Villanova, or can this be the start of a bounce back for this team?
I don't think I do not think it's too late. If Villanova finds its way to the top 3 or 4 of this Big East, they'll certainly be on the bubble. Many of those losses, as we know, were out west in the Portland and the Phil Knight. Nothing to be ashamed of, some of those. This team has the ability to get it going. They have talent all over the place. They just need some confidence, and they need to start winning. There's some teams at the bottom of the Big East they're going to beat up on, no doubt about it. But let's see, when it comes to St. John's, UConn, Creighton, they need to knock off a few of those teams if they're going to get back in the conversation.
I want to follow up on what Dorman said and just say Villanova just needs to get healthy, period. Cam Whitmore's first game was on Saturday against Oklahoma. Granted, it was with a a minutes restriction, but as he starts to get more experience, if they get Justin Moore back, then the Wildcats are going to be a whole different ball of wax.
Certainly.
Griggs, we mentioned a little bit already about Marquette with the loss to Wisconsin, but that was after they did something. They made Baylor look like look like St. Francis of Baylor. I don't know.
Yeah,
They
this was remarkable. Like, you watch this game, you got the feeling that 30 seconds after the tip, Marquette was up 20 and they never surrendered it. And then again, which makes the Wisconsin's win there, as we already alluded to, look really good. But again, like, I don't know. Like, I wasn't that big on Marquette before this game. Was it just an issue of like it just being their night at home and everything going their way, or is this a team that's capable of beating really highly ranked teams and going pretty far when they play up to their ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me a little bit of last year. You know, when Providence went in there, as they end up winning the Big East, Marquette beat them by 30. They beat them by 32. You know, they shoot like 50% from three. The game's over before it begins. It's a little surprising more for me that it happened to Baylor, but Marquette can do this to really kind of anybody in their own building. But they're a different team away from home. I still like them as a potential tournament team. I'm not trying to say they're not. I'm just saying that I don't think they're a dominant like top 20 team overall.
And that's fair enough. And I'm kind of leaning your way, Rocco. Like, this is a decent team that's capable of making the tournament and perhaps probably will. But like, they're a decent team that had an unbelievable night, and it's not going to be the norm.
Here's the upcoming schedule on the screen here. Some of these games we spoke about already. We were talking about the ACC, like the Marquette Notre Dame game and the Georgetown Syracuse game. But we do have an interesting game Wednesday, UConn at Florida. Nice road test for UConn. That could be the end of their undefeated season. I would not be totally shocked me. And Salika, we have Xavier Cincinnati on Saturday.
We're going to have quite a few rivalries coming up this weekend. The crosstown shootout's going to be one of them that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah.
Georgetown and Syracuse.
There's a trophy, right?
Yeah, the trophy for the cross. Is there a trophy for the crosstown?
That's the Gold Star trophy right there.
Yeah, that's the gold.
Yeah, but there's also going to be Seton Hall and Rutgers coming up this weekend. Marquette and Notre Dame, I think we kind of touched on. And Seton Hall, Rutgers.
And
Penn Villanova on Wednesday. Don't forget the Little Big Five action.
The Little Big Five action. Creighton, Arizona State next Monday. Big rivalry.
Let's go. Let's go to the other half of that Big East Big 12 battle here. The Big 12 conference. Conference suffered a bunch of losses in the series, and that's all that it lost this week. But we do have one team sitting up to here on undefeated, still dormant, and that's the Texas Longhorns, 6-0.
They've looked great. They've looked awesome. But someone earlier, I forget who it was, mentioned those two big wins. Creighton and Gonzaga were both at the shiny brand new building on campus. Let's see what happens tomorrow in New York. But Texas has all the pieces. They have everything you need to make a Final Four run. If this team can stay healthy, I don't see why they wouldn't make the Final Four run. I am all in on Texas. I think this team looks great and will continue to roll.
Well, and Rocco, we were just discussing Baylor coming off of that Marquette loss. They go and they beat the Zags.
Yeah, and that was kind of a slugfest. You know, both teams came in there with their tail between their legs, which was a little surprising because I think in the offseason we were all hyping this up as a possible 1 versus 2 game. Ended up being like a 14 versus 15 game. But yeah, I think, you know, Keontae George has just been an unbelievably productive true freshman leading this Baylor team. He was the MVP of that game. I'm very impressed by him. I think a couple disappointments like Langston Love coming off the ACL. He just hasn't looked his full potential yet. Ideally for the Bears, he can get better later. But they did just enough. And, you know, Gonzaga's had their issues. We'll probably talk about them later. And somebody had to win the game. It kind of just looked like if either of them would have played another top 10 team, they both would have lost. But Baylor gets out of there with a win, and that's going to carry a lot of weight later.
I think it will. You know, we already talked about Iowa State a little bit.
Yeah, I was actually wanting to ask Tytel about Iowa State.
Okay, let's ask Tytel about Iowa State. Tytel, what do you think of Iowa State?
So Dorman mentioned all of Texas's great pieces. One of them is Tyrese Hunter, who was on this Iowa State team last year, which is why I did not think they were going to be good this year. And boy, was I dead wrong, because they are 7-1 now. They beat previously unbeaten St. John's on Sunday. They head to Iowa City on Thursday for the big in-state rivalry game. And Coach TJ Otzelberger, I wasn't sure about this hire. He was 29-30 in his 2 years at UNLV. He's looking like a home run so far. The defense is amazing. They lead the nation in defensive turnover percentage. They force almost 21 turnovers a game. When your only loss is to UConn in Portland, I think you're doing just fine. If they get by Iowa, which is a big if, 3 straight home cupcakes, and then they host Baylor in the conference opener on New Year's Eve. This team could be great. Right now, they're just good.
Griggs, let me ask you about one other team here. That's TCU. We almost gave up on this team, which we hyped heading into the season when they had the home loss early on.
It was the Northwestern State.
Northwestern State, but they haven't lost since then, even though they looked bad a few times.
No, they haven't. Rock, I'll let you make. The only point that I was going to make is that we see this every year, and I think that we forget that we see it every year. And when we see it again the following year, we forget that we saw it the year before. TCU, we were expecting big things out of them. They were a Sweet 16 team a year ago that returned everyone. They were really sort of piddling along and playing with their food, and it looked like they slept through their alarm and really had to sweat out some home bye games. And then they lost one, and then now all of a sudden, since then, they've started to look the way that we thought that they would before. And I'm kind of thinking that we're just seeing that again with them. That which we see every year out of someone. Go ahead, Rocco.
I was just saying Northwestern State is awesome. So that
they are
like a bad loss anymore. But for TCU, yeah, it does. But I would say also on top of that, the Northwestern State loss, and Mike Miles sad, of course, and he's the straw that stirs the drink. And now you're looking at a TCU team that's super balanced. The last game against Providence, all 6 of their main regulars got into double figures. All of their offensive ratings were phenomenal. This is a team clicking on all cylinders suddenly. And obviously those first couple of weeks, nothing was clicking the way that we thought there would. And I think Miles was banged up and eventually got rested for a week. And now they're back where they should be.
They had another big win. Who was it against? I'm blanking. I know they beat
Iowa. They beat Iowa by double digits in the
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Here's the upcoming schedule for this week. Sam Houston, number 7 in the net at Oklahoma State coming up tomorrow night, Tuesday night here. We mentioned Iowa State, Iowa. We've got coming up on Saturday. We've got Pine Bluff at Texas, TCU, SMU, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and UAB, West Virginia, and nothing else in this conference.
Hey, no, we got a big one. We've got a big one. We've got a big one this Saturday. The Iron Skillet in basketball.
I wonder what they're playing for.
Okay. Yeah. We have the border war, Kansas, Missouri Saturday. I don't think Missouri has a shot.
Let's hold off till the SEC because Mizzou is undefeated and they probably don't have a shot. But oh my God, that place is going to be. It might come unglued. If it's 4-2 Missouri, the building might fall down.
I give them a shot.
I also circled this other game here Saturday, UAB West Virginia. Kind of interesting.
Very
UAB is a very good team and tough road test to take, but they may have a shot to win this one.
Yeah, this is I mean, it was a great game a year ago. It's not
UAB
UAB did blow it.
Okay. Let's jump over to the SEC as we mentioned, actually. And Dorman, let me start with you here. And let's start with Auburn here, sitting at 8-0. They were actually ranked 11th. There are a couple teams that were higher that with the loss, but they're the 3 undefeated teams. They were the highest rated of them.
Yeah, Auburn's doing the job so far. I saw him play against Northwestern, and I couldn't decide whether Northwestern was playing up, Auburn was playing down, but maybe both teams are solid. Auburn getting used to a bunch of new pieces. Jabari Smith has gone to the NBA, but Broom steps into the middle there, and he's been great. He's been tough. He's been physical. He rebounds. He scores. He's everything you need with a big guy down low who's going to bring it, and he just brings it. And I love his intensity. And he's not the most talented kid in the world, but he's always has an A+ attitude. I like what I've seen so far from Auburn. They haven't had the toughest of schedules, but coming up, we'll see. But I'm impressed so far from what I see with Auburn.
Yeah. Also, Stalika breaking into the top 25 in the AP Bowl. AP poll this week because the voters were so impressed by the win over perennial NCAA doormat Mississippi Valley is Mississippi State. I can't quite figure out that top 25 ranking, but it's just are they gonna be going from there soon or not?
Well, it's possible it could have been a little bit overdue from their performance down in Fort Myers, but where they ended up beating Marquette, and I think it was Utah, which is actually
Right.
turning out to be a better win for the Bulldogs than we had expected. So this could have been about a week late and $1 short.
The other undefeated team, Titel, is we've already mentioned a couple times is the Missouri Tigers with that game against Kansas coming up.
I think people forget this team lost 21 games last year, but after beating SEMO on Sunday, they're undefeated this year. They have the rest of the week off before hosting the Border Wars, so they have time to prepare and rest up. They've been unstoppable inside the arc, 64% from 2-point range, number 2 in the nation. And you know how I like first-year coaches, but give Dennis Cates all the credit. He's been literally perfect since coming over from Cleveland State. He's got a great rotation, 7 guys scoring 9 to 17 points a game, so great balance. The schedule is brutal. You thought Kansas was bad. They get 6-2 UCF in Florida. Then they get Illinois and St. Louis. Then they start SEC play by hosting Kentucky and heading to Arkansas. So good luck.
Yeah, the schedule's getting tough. It has not been tough. Now, to be fair, they did go to Wichita State and win at the Roundhouse. And I remember thinking that was the first game of any type that was even a semblance of a test. Everything else has been kind of the pastry card. And if you follow under the radar, no one really down in tier 4 is even good by under the radar standards.
Hey, Penn, come on.
Actually, I think Penn is good. Rocco, I pulled up on the right there, the Kentucky team that went to London and beat Michigan by 4. Michigan team that's struggled a little bit so far. I don't know if there's any cause of concern here at 6-2 though, especially with a couple of good non-conference games left before they get to conference play, or one good non-conference game left, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a lot to learn about Kentucky. They didn't really play in a real MTE. They went to Spokane and got crushed. Michigan State game was kind of weird, lost in double OT. This Michigan game was, nothing super impressive, but they got the job done. I think by the end, they'll figure it out. We've talked about this several seasons in the past where Calipari is really not as concerned about these early results. He's just building towards March. So I'm sure they're going to be very, very tough by the end of the road. And I'm not too concerned.
I think the big question is who are they going to beat by more points, Florida A&M or Louisville?
Well, don't those two teams play each other? I don't know.
They will play each other too.
Yeah.
So we got a little.
Florida A&M, they could have made that the MTE. That would have been within the rules at FAMU, Kentucky, and Louisville.
There we go. I guess there's a lot of other teams we could discuss here, Griggs. I mean, briefly, we have both Arkansas and Tennessee in the top 10. We have LSU at 7-1 as well here.
Yeah, Tennessee in particular, I'm really impressed with. Arkansas, I might be, but I like Arkansas too. But I liked Tennessee a lot so far, and I think they're going to be fantastic until the end of February.
Tennessee goes to Tucson in a couple of weeks.
That's a good, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a big test for Tennessee on the road there.
Yeah, here's the upcoming schedule. One of the key games that some of these games we've mentioned already, the other conferences, one of the key games we did not. Really huge here, Titel. Alabama at Houston on Saturday.
Good luck.
I mean, I think that if Houston can win it, I don't know that they're going undefeated, but that's one of their last big. I mean, they have Virginia too, but I think it's one of their last big tests.
Right. We mentioned they've got Tennessee, Maryland on Sunday, and Slika, you're going to be tuned into Oregon State, Texas A&M, I think.
Yeah, we're all about Uncle Buzz and Uncle Wayne.
Uncle Buzz is not off to a good start. They're one of the more disappointing teams so far.
Let's jump over to the Pac-12 here, and Titel, let me start with you here. I don't think you want to talk about your team. I think you want to talk about the team that beat your team, and the Utah Utes.
We have to. I mean, find me a school that had a better sports week than the Utes. The football team upset USC in the Pac-12 title game. The basketball team beat Arizona by 15, hung on to beat Washington State in overtime by 2. Coach Craig Smith, much like Missouri, this team lost 20 games last year in his first year in Salt Lake City. Now he looks like the early favorite for Conference Coach of the Year. He's got a couple of home cupcakes ahead. Then he hits the BYU on the 17th for the what some call the Holy War. And the defense has been amazing. Top 10 in the nation from both 3-point percentage allowed, 23%, and 2-point percentage allowed, 41%. It is hard to score on the Utes.
Yeah, Rocco, you were at that game, right?
Yes, yeah, and so yeah, just to echo what John said, I thought they just had a really great game plan. Arizona, they caught Arizona on a really good time as well. Arizona coming off the Maui championship, feeling really good about themselves. Going up into the altitude of Salt Lake City is not easy for anybody, but those circumstances, maybe even a little tougher. Tommy Lloyd after the game said that it seemed like they were running in quicksand for the first half, but I thought Utah from a strategy standpoint did an outstanding job. Ball security, very little turnovers in that game. Really great shot selection. They used all 5 guys effectively and found holes in the Arizona scheme, and were able to slow down the Arizona rim to rim machine, which is the key. And won that thing by 15. But I thought even more impressive, having to go to the Palouse over the weekend right after a big high like that in a league like this is not easy to do, and to gut that thing out in overtime, even more impressive actually, because that was a really good spot for the Arizona game, just schedule wise, but to turn around and get that win in the Palouse when the Cougs were 0-1 and hungry, I'm really impressed by that.
And I wanted to echo, I'm so glad you said that, Rocco, because the win in and of itself was impressive, but the big exclamation point was that they followed it up with a road win in a game that, like, if you're the least bit brain dead, you're not going to win that game.
Exactly. And one other note I should note it is the night that Utah beat Arizona. It was actually the 10-year anniversary of Rick Majerus's passing. So we talked about that a little bit in the press conference. Just kind of a special moment for the
God,
youth.
has it been that long?
Yeah.
Dorman, when we look at this conference, we expected UCLA and Arizona to be good, and they have been. Utah, a bit of a surprise so far. We just talked about them. It's the biggest shock what Arizona State has been doing, especially after they looked so bad in their loss to one of the SWAC teams. Southern or Texas Southern.
Texas Southern, thank you.
And they haven't lost since then. 2 wins this week, including at Colorado.
Yeah, at Colorado was a very solid win, and one of those previous to that was a Michigan win. As we get towards March, I think is going to look better and better. I am stunned and surprised what ASU has done. I thought Hurley would lose the team after that first loss, and he's done actually the absolute opposite. And they've come together. They moved the ball well. They played as a team the other night. They definitely got tested with Colorado, and they came out strong on the road. That's a good win for Arizona State. It'll be interesting to see how they do coming up here. They got some tough conference games coming up, but Hurley has them going in the right direction.
Yeah, before that, they are at SMU coming up here. They got a game against Creighton coming up next week as well. We see the rest of the schedule there, including the big Colorado Front Range rivalry game Thursday night.
Yeah.
Arizona, Indiana, we mentioned already. And Rocco, I'm not going to even I really shouldn't even mention to you the fact that Oregon State has more conference wins this year than they did all of last year, because it's probably still too painful for you as a Washington guy.
Yeah, I mean, that was a weird game. I missed the first half, but Frank Kepnong, the center, having a great year, tore his ACL in the first half. And then Braxton Mia, the backup center, he was in a boot that night. So there's no centers the entire second half. And Washington, to their credit, came back and got the lead, ended up losing by 1 on a extremely questionable foul call. Go back and watch it if you didn't see it. Anyway, kudos to them. They got Mia back on Sunday. They actually beat Colorado, which shocked me.
I'll tell you the point that I make when people complain about a questionable foul call like that. There's no reason Oregon State should have ever been in that game for a foul call to have decided the game. So,
well, they went on a 20-0 run in the first half. So that was a big hole.
But Washington is at Gonzaga in a big game Friday night, or hopefully a big game for Washington.
Yeah, no guarantees.
Yeah.
Is that series going to continue?
Through 25 or 26 at least.
So, okay. So it's not over after this year. Okay, good.
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's jump over to the American. Stalika, the number 1 team in the nation, the number 1 team in the first net, number 1 team in all the predictive metrics is Houston, who just continued to roll, took care of Norfolk State, and a very solid win over St. Mary's on Saturday.
I would say, judging by their performances, Houston is not going to be invited to the Jimmy V Classic anytime soon. Not after the game we saw with Texas Tech and Tennessee last year. Now, getting back to the Cougs, this is the second rock fight type game with boulders that they've had to pull out within the past couple weeks. Kent State was one example. St. Mary's, although this one was not on campus, it was actually in Fort Worth at Dickies Arena. So a decent win for the Cougs right here, because they're not going to get too many big opportunities outside of the American.
Yeah, I'll show you Houston's upcoming schedule the rest of the way here. Actually, that's Houston
That's
Christian.
Houston Christian.
How about Houston Christian schedule?
Yeah, like right out of the.
Let's try again. Let's try Houston's schedule here. They do have a couple of big non-conference games left, though, still with Alabama and at Virginia.
The game at Virginia is the test of all tests. That's a protected seat on the road. Typically, that's one of my did you beat a protected seat on the road when I'm evaluating who should get a 1 seed? But Stalika is right in the fact that Houston has won, but it hasn't always been pretty. And against Kent State, they were down a point with less than a minute to go. Now, I'm not taking anything away from their wins. And if anything, if you can win ugly, then my God, imagine if they start firing on all cylinders. It sounds kind of crazy, but I'm just kind of curious to hear from everyone. I think we all agree that Houston probably has the most potential and should be number one. Have they looked the best to you when you've watched them?
Well,
Not everybody at once now.
I think their style is different. So, you could look at it just on a piece of paper like this or on a digital piece of paper and be like, oh, they only won this game by 5 or they didn't even score 50 points. That's not, Houston doesn't care about that stuff. They just want to beat the hell out of you. And at the end of the day, they're going to win the game.
Yeah,
so
look at those numbers.
It's not a beauty pageant for Houston, and that's what makes them so intimidating. And
look at those numbers I highlighted. They're the number 2 defensive team in the nation, 348 in tempo. They're going to play great defense on a slow game. And that's why you win 49-44 and 53-48.
And they're going to frustrate it. Yeah.
Dorman.
But both those teams were in the game.
Right.
They won. Who won the game, Greg?
They won the game, but it wasn't
Okay.
like you weren't changing the station 5 minutes into the second half, like you would expect.
So they draw viewers too. That's good.
It's Dorman. A good point because somebody in the American could nip them on a night like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Dorman, the Memphis Tigers up there on the right, now sitting at 6-2. Maybe a slightly questionable loss to Seton Hall, but they've got they picked up a win over Ole Miss this week.
They did. It was a solid win against Ole Miss. The Seton Hall was a buzzer beater at the buzzer in the Florida tournament down in Disney World. Wasn't awful. But I'll tell you, so I'm kind of impressed with what Penny's doing so far. But this week, we'll find out what they're made of. They're going to play Auburn in that Atlanta quadruple header. Then they're going to Alabama. I think we're going to know a lot more about Memphis in 6 days. And we'll see if Penny Hardaway can figure out how to coach, because these games, they're going to need him. He's going to have to figure out how to stop the best pieces on Auburn and Alabama because they're super talented and really well coached. Let's see what Penny Hardaway's got up his sleeve this weekend.
Yeah, they then have a chance to really build up a schedule. They don't play Houston the first time till February 19th, although they do play them twice there at the end. Titel, is there a third team worth discussing here on the left with UCF Knights?
So much like you see on the right there, Memphis has 2 losses by 7 points. UCF, 2 losses by combined 5 points. Granted, one of them is a tier 4. I get that. It was double overtime in the season opener, so I think I can explain it away. But tough 3-point overtime win over Samford on Sunday, and they get the rest of the week off. Then they host Tarleton next Sunday. Then the brutal stretch at Mississippi. Then they get undefeated Mizzou in Sunrise, Florida. And as Johnny Dawkins you might expect, they're getting it done with defense. Top 50 in the nation, 62 points allowed per game. What you might not expect is this is a team with real talent. He brought in a top 50 recruit in Taylor Hendricks as a freshman. He's paying immediate dividends, 15.7 boards a game, shooting 46% from behind the arc. So all the McDonald's All-Americans, they don't just go to the Dukes and the Kentuckys of the world. Top 50 recruits go to UCF.
Yeah, and just a comment on that. Hendricks was offered by everybody, but his twin brother got offered by UCF as well, which is why he went there. They both got a scholarship, but his brother doesn't play. It's awesome to see how I got to go to their practice in October, and he's actually the vocal leader of the team. You don't ever see that from an 18-year-old. Out there watching the drills and everything. He's bossing around seniors. So he's a really special player and a real chance to be a one and done.
Yeah. Here's the upcoming schedule. We've mentioned these games Saturday: Alabama, Houston, Memphis, Auburn, Xavier, Cincinnati. You'll see a couple of Big Five games here with Temple, St. Joe's, and Temple Penn this week. So lots of there's the action coming up in the American. But let's jump over to the Mountain West. And there was a time when we were looking at the Mountain West as in fact, I think one year we actually took them off and said they were down under the radar conference.
Yeah.
That's not the case at all this year, Rocco. We are sitting here still with tied for the most undefeated teams of any conference in the nation with 3 of them.
Yeah, it's been really impressive too, because it's not like these teams just play 8 home games like the bigger leagues, right? So New Mexico coming to St. Mary's and ending the 23-game winning streak right down the road here at the old McKeon Pavilion. Now it's sponsored by a company I can't remember, but New Mexico with Morris Udeze and some of the pieces that Patino brought in, they're a whole different team and very impressive. Just look at all their results; they're phenomenal. And Utah State, I can't speak highly enough of them. Came here to San Francisco last night, blew the Dons out of the Chase Center in a surprising result. The Dons have never lost there, although it's only 4 years old. Utah State also blew out Santa Clara, a team I have respect for. They've had some great wins, pulling out a win at San Diego on the road when San Diego's best players went for 43 points. Just an awesome run for both New Mexico and Utah State. And UNLV, last but certainly not least, has just been impressive and getting better each time out, winning their event down there at the SoCal Challenge. This is an exciting 3 teams because I don't think they're just anomalies. I think these are bona fide tournament contenders, and we all like the Aztecs, I think. So this could be very clearly a 4-bid league with some upside with teams like Boise State, maybe Colorado State as well.
Yeah, Dora was going to say that because these 3 teams do not include Colorado State, do not include San Diego State, do not include a Boise State team that has a little life to it. So we could have a deep conference here, believe it or not.
Yes, really deep, really talented. Wyoming without Graham Ike is not to be counted out if he can come back and get healthy. But I'm with you, Chad.
They could steal the an automatic bid with him back. Yeah.
Exactly, and get another bid for this conference. But I don't think this is the fluke. UNLV is playing better ball than they have in years. Nevada off to a great start, but Boise, unbelievable job. And San Diego State was supposed to run and roll through this conference. I don't think so. San Diego State is going to be tested left and right throughout the conference time.
Right. And then like, I think the story of the week, and I can't believe Rocco didn't touch on this. How about San Jose State having a second half lead for against
I tell, who do you want to talk about? New Mexico?
So everybody knows about Hall of Famer Rick Pitino. He was only 4-2 this year at Iona, but his son Richard is a perfect 7-0 after beating St. Mary's on the road last Wednesday. They're getting it done with a bit of luck. Their opponents are only shooting 61% from the free throw line. That's bottom 15 in the nation, but they have great offensive balance. Morris Udeze, Jalen House, Jamal Mashburn Jr., each scoring 16 or more a game. So you cannot just focus on 1 or even 2 guys because they got a 3-headed monster who can beat you. A couple of cupcakes this week. The huge game next Monday. They had 2 Vegas neutral site game against the Dons, like Rocco mentioned, who should be 8-2 by then. It will be a fantastic game.
Yeah, that game is actually not on the schedule because it just got recently added, but that is that New Mexico San Francisco game opened up kind of because of New Mexico was getting their series with New Mexico State canceled for unfortunate reasons. But Stalika, here's the rest of the upcoming schedule. What else are we circling here?
Well, we touched on it earlier. There is going to be a big Front Range game on Thursday for Colorado State, who's running out of opportunities themselves to get some notable wins. Although I'm not sure I would call Colorado quite as noteworthy this year. Certainly more noteworthy than Peru State, who's going to be coming on Sunday.
Yeah, we've also got Boise State at St. Louis.
Yeah,
that's a big one. That is a big one.
Great
yeah. And if Boise wins that, you got to start thinking about them as a legit tournament caliber team, not just potentially, but already building the resume for it.
Well, it depends on how good St. Louis ends up being because they've got a conference kind of hurt.
Yeah, they're going to win a lot of games. We'll get to them in a second.
San Diego State St. Mary's on Saturday, also another big one.
Another really good game. San Jose State going to Santa Clara. If they win that one, you got to start thinking about them.
Okay, and anyhow, let's jump over to the West Coast Conference, where as we record this, Gonzaga actually up 6 at halftime over Kent State, so not blowing them away. And it takes a little while to find Gonzaga when you read through these standings. There they are, way down in 7th place, although obviously rated in the top 25, and they've played a little bit of a difficult schedule so far, Rocco, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if they finish in that if they somehow finish in that 7th spot at the end of the season, they're gonna have like no days to prepare for the WCC tournament because of the way they scheduled Chicago State. But
they might cancel that game. I wouldn't be surprised.
Exactly. That's not gonna happen though. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Gonzaga obviously with some holes this year from what we're used to, and of course getting exposed by elite competition. This Kent State game even tonight is a really good test. It's one of the top 5 under the radar teams, if not better. And so good for them for scheduling these kinds of games, because maybe they knew something we didn't. They needed a few extra tests to get ready for a much better WCC. I do think the league overall, St. Mary's once again took it to Houston, just fell short, couldn't make enough shots. Had a chance a little bit there late, but couldn't get it done. Portland's had their moments, but they also lost by 14 at home to Seattle. So I think you'll see some ups and downs with Portland. Clearly some talent. A lot of talent at Pepperdine, Santa Clara playing well, but just, no bona fide. I think St. Mary's is certainly a second team in. I don't know if we're going to get more than 2 in, though, because there's just too much inconsistencies across the other 8.
Well, let me ask you this, San Francisco, Rocco, I was a little surprised you weren't bigger on San Francisco. I know they lost big to Utah State last night, but I think that's more like Utah State being really good than it is San Francisco not being. I think San Francisco has a shot at running at the bubble and maybe getting inside of it again.
Yeah, I would love to see that. It's just a very guard heavy team. They're still trying to figure out their defense. The offense hasn't been as efficient. It was nice that they won that event out in Kansas City when they beat Wichita in a good championship game there. But they've got, that loss to Davidson was a big meltdown down the stretch. There's just a lot of warning signs that they got to clean up quick. But there's a lot of experience on the team, so there's hope.
They got their St. Mary's games and their Gonzaga games in conference, but not really much in terms of non-conference tests left at UNLV.
So
Arizona
check this out. 3 of their next 4 games are actually against the 3 undefeated Mountain West teams. Now that New Mexico's in there, so you've got they just played Utah State. Then you've got New Mexico on the 12th, and then UNLV on the 7th.
I'm sorry,
so they're going to play all 3 of them.
Yeah. I forgot about the New Mexico game missing there. That makes the schedule better. Titel. What about Pepperdine?
So they got destroyed by 47 at UCLA the night before Thanksgiving, and I was ready to give up on them. But they did beat NAU last Saturday. They are 5-2. They'd probably be 6-1 if they had not committed 17 turnovers in a 3-point loss at Fullerton last month. Talk about teams living by the 3 and dying by the 3. They're living 41% behind the arc, number 11 in the nation, but also playing great interior defense. 41% allowed from 2-point range is also top 15 in the nation. Tough home game against Nevada Tuesday, but my theme of the night is teams who were terrible last year and are off to great starts. They lost 25 games last year. Coach Lorenzo Romar has got to be thrilled that his team is 5-2.
Yeah, and I agree. He's done a really good job this year, and Mark Few is in it for his pal.
Here's the remaining upcoming schedule. I think we've talked about most of these games of note already. So to just go through them on the screen here and quickly move on to our final conference. Dorman, that final conference is the Atlantic 10.
Boy.
And we talked about St. Louis, the only top 60 net. If we go by net, they probably on the good side of the bubble right now. Nobody else.
SLU's good. They are. You're talking to
yeah, I'm talking to Dorman though, Briggs. How about SLU?
If you've been talking to me, I would have said SLU was good.
If there was ever a year that Fordham was going to break through and show up at the tournament, this is the year. They have a solid team, but this conference looks awful. Frank Martin, Angry Frank at UMass, is doing good things. They had a huge win tonight. But the A10, and I'm a big fan of the A10 basketball. I love it. I still will always. But VCU is not VCU. George Mason is way down. I was expecting Dayton to be a top 25 team. They've looked terrible. I know. I'm really surprised. I'm waiting for them to wake up, but they're not doing it. If there was ever a year, Fordham, it's your chance. Wake up and take it.
Well, how about that, Titel? How about the Fordham Rams? Can we hear their name on Selection Sunday?
Oh my God.
Probably not, but if you haven't heard of Coach Keith Ergo's name, you
No.
better learn it. Born in DC, played basketball and lacrosse at Fairfield, assistant at Villanova, assistant at Penn State, associate head coach last year at Fordham, then hired in April. 8-1. His only loss is on the road at Arkansas. He's got a great veteran 1-2 punch. Senior guard Darius Quisenberry, senior forward Khalid Moore, both scoring 15 points a game. They got 4 straight games against teams outside the Ken Pom top 250. So they're probably going to be 12-1 when they host Davidson to finish this month on the 28th. They might even be favored against Davidson.
Well, Davidson just lost to Charlotte,
Right.
where they lost this.
They lost
For
the
real.
Well, I think this is the perfect trophy for the Atlantic 10 this year. But the A10, the stories are, I know Dayton is without a key player, but they don't look like a top 25 team without a key player. They look terrible. Like, they don't even look like an NIT team. Their only real wins have been home bye wins, and they haven't even looked good at those. Like, there's no way one player is that much of a difference maker. The story in this league is Fordham, Duquesne, and UMass. Had you said that, 2 months ago, you'd have been sent to a home somewhere.
Yeah, I think Dayton's down a couple players right now, if as I recall.
Well, they look like they're down
Toby.
everybody. Like they're just pitiful.
Yeah, I think Elvis and Smith are both out, right? Rocco?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smith came back the last game, but he's
Okay.
limited minutes still. Yeah.
Okay. Um,
And they won the game, so it's not the end of the
Yeah.
world.
Stalika, how about the Duquesne Dukes? I mean, here we are 1-2 in the A10 in December, and it's Fordham Duquesne.
The Mighty Dukes are another team that's coming off of a buzzer beater at home against Ball State, where
It
they
was awesome.
hit a 3 with under a second remaining.
Yeah.
So the Cooper Fieldhouse is suddenly becoming one of the tougher places to play in the A10. Well, sorry, the UPMC Cooper Fieldhouse. Let's show some respect to our sponsors.
Yeah. They're going when they play Pitt, it's going to be a lit game.
Here's the-
St.
Here's the
Louis,
upcoming-
Iona tomorrow night.
I was going to say, I think that may be the only game we're circling on the entire A10.
Wagner
schedule
and
here.
Fordham, a crosstown shootout, sir.
Dana must win for Dana at Vatek, and I don't think they can with what they have.
Marshall. and
Okay, there
Duquesne.
is one. There is legitimately one here, and it involves a team you just talked about. This Marshall team, they lost their season opener to Queens. They haven't lost since, and they've actually looked really good. This is both a test for Marshall and can Duquesne. This is an odd situation where Duquesne's playing an intriguing game at home against a good team. That's actually a decent game.
And
on
then
Thursday
another,
night.
another 1 loss versus 1 loss is actually the Battle of the UMasses on Thursday. UMass Lowell just won by 30 tonight. They're 8-1. UMass obviously 8-1 after tonight's win. So you got the Battle of the UMasses could be pretty interesting Thursday night.
And you want to throw in there with Duquesne, and they follow up the with over the weekend. They got New Mexico State at home. Perennial
And
power,
UMass
although
has
they're a little
Hofstra.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boise State at St. Louis Saturday.
I feel like we're on the Under the Radar show, though, and I feel like we may be discussing the A10 on Under the Radar shows before the season is over as well.
Yeah.
But that does complete all the conferences. So let's turn to final thoughts. And while I got the screenshot up, Titel, why don't I start with you?
So I know he's not exactly an over the radar star, but we got to start talking about this man, Antoine Davis. He had 23 points in the loss at Cleveland State last Saturday. He's now 13th in the history of Division I with 29.42 career points. Fifth-year star is shooting a career high 38% from behind the arc and committing a career low 2.9 turnovers per game. So he's getting better as he gets older. If he can score 10 more at Tulsa Wednesday, he passes Danny Manning and is number 12 all time. If he can score 32, he passes Oscar Robertson and becomes number 11 all time. By next week, he should become the 11th member of the 3,000 point club. He's got 22 regular season games. I don't think he's going to catch Pete Maravich for the top spot. He only needs to average 14 a game to pass Freeman Williams and become the second best Division I scorer ever behind only the Pistol. Shout out Antoine Davis.
Throw in there as well. I believe that he is currently, it's ongoing, the NCAA all-time record leader for consecutive double-digit scoring games. Advantage of having a COVID year and then extra playing time, I think, has helped. But I think that's a record that he may never be broken because of that by the time he's done. Let's go ahead and pull this down here and run over to you, Stalika.
I'm going to go more on the women's side of basketball right here. Now, during a feast week, apparently there was a tournament out in Las Vegas where it was kind of looking like the AC8 in some ways, where they had almost an empty ballroom with some folding chairs. But here's the unfortunate part, and this is a serious note. There was an Indiana player that got injured during the game, and she had to wait for 50 minutes for medical help because they did not have any EMTs on hand. That was a serious health risk. And not surprisingly, there is another tournament in Vegas over the holidays. It's going to be scrambling to find 3 teams because Texas A&M, Dayton, and Purdue have all pulled out of the tournament. So there's going to be a lot of questions being asked as far as how some of these events are being organized right here.
Yeah, and then that's absolutely awful that they don't have medical personnel in an event, and that whoever organized that event should never be allowed to organize another event ever again.
One of the fans literally had to call 911 to get EMTs. That's how serious it was.
I do have a question, John. Do you happen to know if it's the same organizers?
I think.
I thought that was the whole thing. Was the same organizers? But
I don't have the exact details on here, but I would not be surprised if it was the same organizing group that was in charge.
That actually, I am hearing that for the first time. The NCAA needs to act on that and not let them organize any more exempt events.
I believe two of the teams that were scheduled to play each other are actually going to play each other on one of their home courts. So they try to
that's
make
Texas A&M and Purdue.
Yeah,
but it's absolutely awful. But
right, that's ridiculous.
Let's keep moving on here, Dorman.
I had no idea what Stalika's final point was, but mine happened to be right on the same path based on what happened. I've said it for years. The media and the people in the front row, especially behind the basket, are way too close to the game. How many games do you see where they go out under the basket and the guys with the cameras and stuff, they're just way too close? Someone's knee is going to get busted. Someone's legs is going to get broken. Enough. Move them back. I love the pictures. I love watching all these games. But we got to move the media where they're safe and the players are safer. It's not right to put these kids at jeopardy just because you need a cameraman so close to the action. Move the media back under the basket. Someone's going to get hurt really bad, like Stalika just pointed out.
You know, we're in a day and time here now where the technology is you can have a small camera mounted somewhere without a person there. It's a small thing. And I don't know why you need a guy sitting there with a 300-pound camera under each basket. That I've never understood that for about the last 10 years now. Rocco.
Yeah, some quick hitters for final thoughts. So first off, we didn't really talk about Clemson at all during the ACC, but I thought they had a really impressive week, grinding out a great double overtime win against a pretty solid Penn State team and following it up with a 20-point blowout over Wake Forest. I think the key story out there at Clemson is PJ Hall coming off of a serious injury. He's finally getting over 20 minutes. His first 6 or 7 games this year, he was only getting 10 to 14 minutes. Now he's over 20 minutes. This team is very intriguing. They'll have Towson in on Wednesday. I'm very curious for both those teams Wednesday night. Another team we didn't really talk about too much was Maryland, who I also thought another phenomenal week, grinding out that Illinois battle. Not a lot was expected, but Jameer Young is immediately emerged as a huge story coming out of the transfer portal from the Conference USA program of Charlotte that had that trophy. Jameer has just been unbelievable, and a lot of schools didn't offer him. Kevin Willard scooped him on his way to Maryland, and this week, I think if they win both these games somehow, they'll be in the top 5 because they're going to play at Wisconsin and then Tennessee on a neutral. If they win both of them, they'll still be undefeated with even better resume, a good chance to crack the top 5. And then Fresno State had a really tough November, 1-5, injuries galore. Isaiah Hill comes back the other night, and they blew out a very good UC Irvine team by 18.
That was shocking.
And got some friends over there at Fresno State. So just a shout out to them. They're a really tough program, and they persevered through a tough month and played awesome the other night.
And if they pick it up, that's it. That's even more about Mountain West we can be discussing here. We
Yeah.
may be leading the show with the Mountain West by in a few weeks.
Yeah.
But Briggs, you want to finish us off here? We're way over time.
Yeah, I was kind of excited today to see, well, not just today. When you look at both the AP and the coaches poll, the top two teams, one is Houston and one is Texas. It's kind of hard to notice that. It's also almost impossible to notice that they almost never play. John Titel did some good research. They actually met in, what was it? The basketball, was it Basketball Travelers? What's the one that?
CBI.
I think.
Yeah, the
CBI.
CBI event, and they played a game back in 2000, but that was their last regular season game, was over 20 years ago. I got the sense that, like, even though Houston had nothing to do with breaking up the Southwest Conference, once it was broken up, Texas seemingly wanted nothing to do with them. Why don't these two teams work on scheduling each other in football or basketball, but particularly basketball? You cannot say that game would not intrigue the nation.
I will just say that it's only been a few years now that game would have been intriguing since Houston has really picked things up.
So 20 years later,
go back 5 years ago, and it would have been an ESPN Plus stream.
Okay,
So
it's
about 10
time
or
for
20
them
years
to
ago-
schedule that, to get that game scheduled.
Okay.
I was going to say about 10 or 20 years ago, is the public going to finally have to give the Gazelle Group some credit for getting this matchup together?
No.
Yeah. All right. On that note, I do want to thank everybody for joining us. We'll be back on Wednesday evening with an Under the Radar podcast. Next Monday with another Hoops HD report. But on behalf of David Griggs and David Dortman, John Titel, John Stalico, Rocco Miller, check him out at bracketeer.org as well. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chad Sherwood. Talk to you again real soon.